get out onto 22 and then we will start our journey. I've spent 2 years reporting on the Bakken oil field in North Dakota. I've seen it when it was booming back in 2014 and now when it's busting. There's one highway in the oil field town of Dickinson, Highway 22, where you can see the entire boom and bust story. So we're going on a road trip through Oil Bust Alley to see what we can learn in this 5-mile stretch of road about how a community changes when the price of oil crashes. Let's start with the obvious losers, businesses directly involved in the drilling and production of oil. So I'm standing in front of a field of stacked drilling rigs. There's about 27 back there, we just counted. And that's actually about the same amount that are actively drilling for oil in North Dakota. 2 years ago, when the price of oil was high, there were over 180. And it's really a sign of how much things have slowed down here in the oil field. Every time a drilling rig gets idled, about 120 people lose their jobs.
Well, yeah, and I can definitely get you in.
People like Kaylee Haugen's husband, who worked on a drilling rig for over a decade before being laid off last year. Haugen has also seen a huge impact of the slowdown on her business, the uniform unit, which is right on Highway 22.
We do uniforms for a variety of industries. We do flame-resistant clothing for the oil and gas industry as well as electrical. We do scrubs, medical uniforms, and then we also have brought in tactical for the EMS management services.
The uniform unit just opened last spring, right as oil prices were tanking.
If we would have been operating, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I would bet 90% of our business would have been oil field. Now I would say we're pretty even within the different fields. I would say 30% oil field, 30% tactical, 30% scrubs. So definitely different than I thought.
Hotels have also been hit hard by the slowdown. Over 1,000 new hotel rooms were built in Dickinson in the past 12 years. Connie Hank and Bill Evans manage and do maintenance in 3 of those hotels just off Highway 22.
When I got here in March of 14, there were no vacancies. If somebody checked out, you probably already had somebody's name who was waiting on that room.
You would have been paying $80 a night for a single and almost over just about $100 for a double. That was cheap. And now you can get a room for $32 a night. That's a big change.
Drastic.
Now their hotels are at less than 30% occupancy.
Doofy, come here.
They end up with a lot of time on their hands.
I'm sitting here waiting, praying that a car pulls into my parking lot. And that is the truth. We looked like a bunch of vultures. The minute they walked in the door, I was like, hey, thank you for coming here,
Just down the highway, there are signs that other parts of the housing market are also hurting. So coming up, there's this man camp graveyard. It's just this field full of trailers that are just like jumbled together, almost piled on top of each other because people don't have a need to house these workers anymore because they've laid off so many of their employees. The slowdown in the oil field hasn't been uniformly bad. Custom cabinet maker TMI Systems had 25% growth last year. That means they need a lot of new workers.
And then over here, it's grabbing those boards and turning them if they need to be.
General Manager Tom Kronk says a few years ago, the cost of living was high in Dickinson due to the housing shortage brought on by the influx of oil workers.
But with the rents where they were at, it was tough to even attract people at that because even though we had good wages, the rents were beyond where they could justify moving out here to work for us.
But now, there's no longer a labor shortage. There are far more applicants than job openings, and rental prices are dropping. So TMI Systems is having no trouble hiring.
As time went on, the oil field layoffs got deeper and deeper, and pretty soon we started seeing some of our former employees coming back.
Scott Wind is one of them. He worked at TMI for 21 years before leaving in 2012 to load crude oil onto rail cars.
For me, I was looking for a challenge, possibly a little higher pay. Obviously, that's an attraction for people. But with the slowdown in the oil business, I wanted to look for other opportunities, and one of the first things that came to mind for me was TMI.
The slowdown is also benefiting the local government. Dickinson City Administrator Sean Kessel says hiring is easier and expenses are lower because they no longer have to compete with higher oil field salaries. But on the downside, the oil bust has sent tax revenue tumbling.
So we've lost about $1.5 million into our general fund. That's a big hit for the general fund. Our general fund is about $16 million. So to lose 1.5 out of that fund causes you to be creative.
Creative. If I've learned anything covering the oil field, it's that oil booms and busts force communities, individuals, and businesses to be creative. Take this Taco Bell right on Highway 22.
You can order when you're ready.
Hi, can I get an order of nachos, please? They couldn't hire or retain workers during the boom because it was so easy to get a higher paying job. So they decided to triage. For a while, only their drive-thru was open. You couldn't go inside. Now they're fully staffed again. As we headed out of town, we drove past the drilling rig graveyard one last time. For Kessel, those idled rigs are actually a sign that the oil industry hasn't given up on North Dakota.
What that means is when they stack them like that, they can respond quickly when things change. When that price goes up, they can just simply move it from that rig yard to wherever their list is on the wells that they want to invest in next.
Like many people in western North Dakota, Kessel wants the oil activity to come back, just not quite as crazy as last time. For Inside Energy, I'm Emily Guerin.